and to instill the fear, it would result with violence. From early childhood, Romans were drilled into them to have an ongoing ambition, an ambition to gather more riches, for more stature, for more control. In the Roman culture, slaves were abundant. This was part of the riches and statures that their ambition would have you control, to gather themselves more slaves underneath you so that they, in fact, can do more of your work. In Roman cultures, there were many words that the Greeks used to speak of slaves. And the different slaves had different responsibilities. They had different rights, all except for one, the Greek word doulos. When doulos is used to speak of a slave or a servant, it is speaking of the class of slaves that had no rights. In the passage of Mark 10:42 through 45, the doulos is speaking of people who are serving God and his people. To show this, we just have to look at the life of Jesus. Jesus was a divine servant. You can see that from the time he was born. You can see it through his ministry, and you can see it through his death. All of these were filled with the service for God. As Christ did his ministry, he would walk with people, he would talk with people, and he would serve the people. The book of Mark mentions many accounts of this. There's at least 18 separate miracles written and recorded in Mark, including the popular stories that we hear. But then there's also a few more mentions of Jesus healing the multitudes. Not only are these put there to tell of what Christ did when he was on earth, but the first thing that does is it speaks to his authority as the Son of God. It shows that the Father sent him. He did have the power to do the miracles that he was doing. He did have the power to forgive sin. But there's a second part to this. And what that pertains to is Christ had a constant heart for service. It wasn't just a doing it when people were looking. It wasn't just a serve people for personal gain. Christ has truly loved to serve God's people. All people. In the whole book of Mark, the verse 10:45 is the key verse. After reading throughout the whole book, this would be the title statement. This is what the whole book speaks of. And that is the fact that Jesus was the perfect role model for all when it comes to seeing what a servant should look like. To see this, you look at what lied behind the reasons why he did what he did. Jesus didn't do it for money. He didn't do it for material things. He even speaks of that the Son of God has no place to rest his head. He didn't do it for fame or popularity. And granted, now his name did become well known, still well known. And the popularity he might have gave from that is one that most of us would not look for. He knew where that popularity would lead, which is to his crucifixion. Jesus didn't do it for favors. He didn't do it expecting anything back. He did it just from love. So many times we'll do a favor for somebody, but we don't do it because we just want to help somebody. We want to do it so that in turn, when it's our turn, we can call them up and say, hey, remember that favor I did for you? Well, now I need you to return that favor. God held none of this in his heart. Christ was there just to do the pure will of the Father. Throughout it all, Christ's focus was on heavenly rewards. We are told many, many times throughout scriptures to seek the rewards of heaven and not of earth. And none can ever show it as well as Christ did. So we ask ourselves, how does this pertain to us today? So many, many, many years later. Well, as we discussed, Christ had compassion for serving. And that's the compassion that we need to make sure that we carry throughout all of our lives. Whether you're actually called into the ministry of the church. But each one of us is called to the ministry. Whether it be at home, whether it be at our workplace, whether it be at the mall, whether it be just a stranger that we just sit next to on a bench. But we have to check our heart. It is what's in our heart that shows us if we're truly being a servant. Like Dula says, we have no rights. We have no right to go to heaven. There's nothing that we can do, no great works that are going to be good enough to get us into heaven. It's only by God's grace. So we need to show that light through our heart and our compassion. So a few reasons to ask yourself, why am I serving? Am I serving because people are looking and I want to look good? Do I serve just for the sole purpose of making myself feel better? Now, is there something wrong with feeling good about serving? No. But that should not be your primary objective of it. And we shouldn't be doing it to feel important. I used to be part of a ministry that reached out to families staying in extended stay motels. And it would be easy for someone to go in there with the attitude that I feel more important than these people because I'm not stuck in this motel. But for me, it was easy to keep humble because I used to be one of those motels, my family and myself. But when we talk to people, we see them many times in their lowest parts in life. They're at their lowest level. And they don't need somebody to look down on them, hover over them, and cast a shadow. What they need is someone to listen, to take the time out, to walk beside them so that God's light can show in. Christ died for many, both back in the day when he walked the earth, for those that lived before he was born, and for many, many that come after his crucifixion. So what does that call for us? That calls for us to share the good news of the gospel to all nations. Now, some people think that's just for missionaries. We'll pay them money. We'll send them across seas. But as I said before, each one of us is called into ministry. Whether it be sharing the gospel with that stranger on the bench. Whether it be sharing that gospel with a coworker. Whether it be just actually and actively looking for those who are in need. Many times we'll walk past them thinking as long as I don't make eye contact, we're fine. God doesn't care about eye contact. God doesn't care about physical contact. What he cares is the contact of your heart. If your heart is truly with God, then you are called to serve. Even when it makes you feel uncomfortable. Even if it seems really strange. To give you a couple of instances of that, my family and I have done some weird things in the name of service. One time we had a couple that was coming to this ministry, and eventually they both ended up in the hospital, and the man died. So the wife contacted his brother, who lived out in Oregon, and told him that his brother passed away. So he had arranged to fly down here, and unfortunately they have not seen each other in many, many, many years. So he was supposed to fly down here. The wife was going to have her daughter go up and meet him at the airport, which is about an hour away from here. And then they were going to help him get a place to stay. About 1 o'clock in the morning, the telephone rings. And I was not very energetic to answer the phone. And thankfully, my wife gave me the nudging that I needed to pick up the phone and listen to the voice. And the strangest thing is, this man says, "You don't know me, but I'm Carl's brother." And Carl was the gentleman, obviously, that passed away. And he told me the story of what the plans were, but he said that he was at the airport and there was nobody there to meet him. He said he called their telephone many, many times and nobody answered. He said he had gotten my phone number from the hospital, as I was recorded as the minister of Carl, and wanted to know if there's any way that we can come pick him up. So we said sure. We told him it'd be about an hour before we got there. So me and my wife got dressed and ran up there to the airport, and we picked the gentleman up. And so we brought him back down to town, and we asked him, where are you staying? And it turns out the only place he had to stay was in a room where his dead brother had lived. And we said, well, you're more welcome to stay with our family. And, that'd be tough on anybody. And he said, no, he'd be fine. And so we dropped him off, and we made sure he got into the room and everything. So the next day, my wife had to go up there and make sure he was okay and got settled in. I unfortunately was at work. And it turned out that they had took all the covers, the blankets, the towels, the washcloths, everything's bare in this room. So my wife took him around, and we got him what he needed to have, and repeatedly invited him to stay here. But what it turned out to be is this stranger spent a week with my family, and we have been friends ever since. We still talk and converse. And at this point, when he came down, I'm not going to say the gentleman wasn't a believer that there was a God. He was not a follower. He was bitter towards the idea. And after this experience, he constantly shares how he prays for others, and he asks for prayers. And truly, I just think it's been beneficial for God's glory, and they've come closer in a personal relationship. So that stranger that you may think is a bother to go up and get at 1 o'clock in the morning, or the stranger that doesn't look clean enough, they're human. You're human, I'm human, and we're all broken. And if anybody needs servants, that's what's broken. If everything is perfect, nothing needs to be done. But this earth is far from perfect, and so are we. So the next time you're talking to people or walking by people, open your ears, your eyes, but most of all, ask the Holy Spirit to open your heart to receive God's will and answer the call. Who knows? You might find some new friends. God bless.